Got a clip with some of this. Let's watch it here.
So I just noticed the signs that you've got from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does that mean?
Well, it's quite self-explanatory.
How would that come about? What would happen to the Israelis, etc.?
I don't.
I'm trying to think of how to word it. Isn't it just as self-explanatory as the area of land? It's Palestine's land.
What's a socialist intifada?
If I'm being honest with you, I just got this at the stand over there.
Okay.
I don't actually know the definition of the word intifada.
I mean, it's kind of laughable. I don't think for a moment that a lot of people on that march are that ignorant about it. A lot of them clearly are well informed and are absolutely marching because they want peace and they want a ceasefire in Gaza. I completely understand that. But Wajahat, when you hear that, there are a lot of young people joining up in these marches who are completely clueless. And I actually blame TikTok more than anything, which is the #1 news source now for kids under 25, and spews just relentless nonsense into their heads. And that's where they get their news.
This is where I'm going to stand up for the youth. If you look at the youth, it's been a stunning change where most youth here and abroad are actually, if you will, pro-Palestinian and want the occupation to end. And the flip side to that, Piers, I would say is the following. For those who are watching, we're the same when it comes to Facebook, we're the same when it comes to X, and we're the same when it comes to mainstream media. You are a breath of fresh air because you allow multiple opinions to come on, talk about Palestinian side and Israeli side. In America, you know that this wasn't the case. And so for those people who are terrified by the TikTok, just think about what limited viewpoints that you got for 30, 40 years. And now, for better and for worse, this young generation is exposed to multiple narratives and they see for themselves what's happening, which is why you see the shift in which a lot of people, especially in Israel and here, are horrified by the Netanyahu government, want an end to the occupation, want a ceasefire, hate Hamas, hate extremists in the Netanyahu government, and believe that Palestinians have a right to freedom.
Yeah, well, they certainly do, in my estimation. But there is one clip, Constantine, which really got to me. It was about me. Let's take a look.
So I see you've got a sign there that says journalism that get paid for selling lies, and I'm guessing that's Piers Morgan, right? Why do you say that this is journalism that's selling lies?
It's very obvious what is going on, all the lies about what happened on the October 7th, the justification for the genocide, they're all based on lies.
When you say lies about October 7th, what do you mean?
All those allegations that we never saw any footages of decapitated children that Piers Morgan always asked about, and all those women that got gang raped.
I mean, it was quite extraordinary, Constantine, because one of the problems with platforming everybody actually for the last 3 months is you end up with the extremes on both sides hating you with equal vengeance and often being completely ill-informed actually about what I've actually said. But it was enlightening to see that because I see that all day long on social media, that kind of view, which is really based on a lack of reality.
Well, there was a lot of that going on in the protest. And interestingly, I mean, you say most people there are well informed. We released in that half-an-hour documentary that people can go to Trigonometry, our YouTube channel, and watch. We released every single interview that we did. So we haven't cherry-picked these moments to make people look bad or anything like that. It contains, they're shortened down, but they are basically the content of what people said to us.
Okay.
And I have to say, most of the people we spoke to, didn't really seem that well informed, most of them. And secondly, I would say there was an awful lot of the sort of thing you just heard where people have some kind of way of pretending October 7th didn't happen. In fact, the first person you see in the video talks about how it's a false flag operation. There seems to be a lot of that going on too, where people are sort of, they sort of wish away the terrorist attack on October 7th. And it makes sense because if you're calling for a ceasefire, and you're calling on Israel to unilaterally, essentially, engage in the ceasefire, you have to pretend October 7th didn't happen because otherwise you'd be calling on Hamas to hand over the hostages and the terrorists who took them because that's how you get a ceasefire.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest blow-ups I had, Wajahat, was after that interview with that doctor, actually, in which I'd already read out some quotes from another member of his group talking about LGBT filth, feminist filth, really horrible, homophobic, misogynist stuff, which this guy had been caught saying. And the doctor is the leader of the UK Arms, as one of his people. And then he talked about people who want now to, women in particular, who want now to become Muslim. And I said, what, to live under oppression? And what I meant was the oppression that had been spouted by this guy. You know, I'm not remotely anti-Muslim. I'm not remotely anti-Islam. I led the media campaign in this country against the Iraq War, for example. I led the defense of Qatar for its right to have the World Cup and exposed a lot of Western hypocrisy about the Christians there and so on. So I really am not remotely anti-Muslim. I was talking about the kind of interpretation of Islam and Muslim world that members of that group espouse, which is vile against women. So if you want them to come into that world, it is oppressive. But it was interesting to me to watch the ferocious explosion on social media, which bore no relation to the context of why I said what I said.
If I may, I've been in this for a long time. I was 21 years old when 9/11 happened. I'm a Muslim American college student. And let me just, if I may, explain to your viewers the double standard that the rest of us feel. Just very quickly. Muslims are asked for the past 20 years to condemn violent acts done by violent people we've never met. When I came on your show last time, you remember that. It was a nutty guest who accused me of being Hamas simply because I'm Muslim.
Right.
And I had to condemn every single violent extremist organization. That's a double standard that never happens to any other group, and I hope it doesn't happen to any other group. The second thing is the most extreme violent members of our quote-unquote community are used to define us. The most extreme, violent, reprehensible people are used to define the religion of 1.8 billion people. That does not happen to other groups, right? Imagine if I said all white people are defined by the KKK or Donald Trump, and each and every single time you're on TV, I'm asking you, what do you say about these white nationalist groups? What do you say about Donald Trump? Aren't you ashamed? Have you condemned them? You're like, why are you asking me? And most of my friends aren't like this.
You did that earlier
and then
in this
finally,
conversation.
the warning I want to give here is you and I, Piers, had the foresight to see the devastation of the war on terror. You and I were the ones 20 years ago who were against it. For those who are watching, especially in the UK, learn from America's mistakes. When you use fear and anger and rage to create domestic and foreign policies, it leads to extremism, it leads to divisions. We had a war against Iraq and Afghanistan. We had a quagmire. We had people being deported. We had a chilling effect. We had a trust deficit between law enforcement and American Muslim communities. We had a rise in hate crimes. Learn from our mistakes and don't let the worst of you and your worst fears contaminate what you have in the UK, which is a multiracial society. You still have hope.
Vajak, thank you very much indeed for joining me, especially at late notice as it was today. We appreciate it. Konstantin, always great to have you on. I commend that film you've made. It's very enlightening. People can go see it on the Trigonometry website, which is well worth half an hour of your time. Thank you both very much.